Alrighty, what's up guys, single player Nacho here. Grab a ladder, a lift, or a gigante. These are the 10 biggest B.O.Ws and monsters in Resident Evil, Part 2. And with how humongous and deadly these monsters are, we definitely needed another list. I don't think many of us would survive an encounter with these 10 non-gentle giants. We'd probably just freeze in awe, and they'd just step on us, pretty much. You'd better hope you don't find these B.O.Ws in an open area, cause their big feet, or claws, or fins would secure your doom. First up, Resident Evil 5, UROBOROS AHERI. Now many of you may be wondering the same thing. How can this transform into this? You're looking at the power of UROBOROS. The AHERI is a massive tentacle pod creature that encapsulates the entire ship. And I would say it's Titanic-sized. I mean, its eye branches are big on their own, and the AHERI has a bunch of them. Sure, the height alone is something that's worth noting, but even more curious is the transformation itself. Exela is probably around 5'9" or 5'10", and all it takes is some Ouroboros nastiness to create a full-blown monster out of you. I guess it's all putrid in there. She vomits vines, and those vines feed into a pool of corpses just lying around, which undoubtedly adds to the AHERI's size. This thing is definitely a sight to behold. Next up, Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, TALOS TYRANT. If you're not a fan of shoot-'em-up light gun games, then you might not like Umbrella Chronicles, or the TALOS TYRANT, because it's also equipped with a frickin' bazooka. While not enormous, this thing is one beefy tyrant with metal-plated armor covering up giant tyrant muscles. This thing is tank-sized at most. And that's not what the Talos is known for. The tyrant base form is powerful, but the real chunk of power comes from the various chips implanted in its brain that gives it higher mobility and strength. The Talos is like the iPhone version of the tyrants, and it is an absolute unit indeed. When damaged enough, the Talos will transform into an even bigger, heavier chunk boy. The exposed spinal cord really gives me that RE4 Big Cheese vibes. I mean, look at the pecs on this thing. It's truly terrifying. Next up, Resident Evil Remake, Neptune. Ah yes, Sharkface finally makes it on a list, and rightly so. Neptune is usually overlooked as an enemy due to the lack of eyeballs, tentacles, and sacks. Ew. We all pretty much know about sharks, but what isn't talked about, a colossal 16 feet and 3,000 pounds. It easily makes Redfield into fish food. And just about anything, for that matter. Neptune is the ultimate predator of the sea, and also one of Umbrella's first prototypes. This is pretty obvious when you look at its primal actions of beating the shit out of a glass with its head. That's so many concussions. Good thing this thing needs water to survive, or we'd all be doomed. Next up, Resident Evil Village, Lady D. Well, this was just a given. Even in her standard form, Lady Dimitrescu is a staggering 9'6", or 290 centimeters. Huge, huge woman. Her hat alone is like 6 feet tall, probably. Jokes aside, Lady Dimitrescu is firstly recognized by her height and retractable, tyrant-like claws. Not only that, she has a personality that is larger than life. I mean, the fact that they animated her to bend over through doorways is hilarious, and I'm surprised she's not in a wheelchair by now. She's big on a human level and a monster level, with her Cadu implant stretching her into a furious winged beast that dwarfs most of the enemies encountered in Resident Evil Village. Tall woman, big monster on the inside earns Lady D a spot on this list. Next up, Resident Evil 6, Derek Simmons. Resident Evil 6 may not be a favorite RE game for most fans, but what it does have is colossal enemies. Derek Simmons is an evil, evil man that brought about a global epidemic that killed hundreds of thousands. So you know there's a big sea virus creature hiding inside of him. But that's incorrect. as there are actually various creatures hiding inside Derek Simmons. Some of them are medium-sized creeps like the dino-shaped monster that eats up and spits out bullets, or like this. Derek's last form fills out the top of a skyscraper, so not only is it big, but it's pretty dramatic. I also like how this twerp's name is Derek. It's just not evil sounding, but regardless, the height on this thing is remarkable, and it's one of those boss fights that fills out the player's entire screen. Good riddance. Next up, Resident Evil Dead Aim, Morpheus. Talk about bad blood. Morpheus, or in this case the Morpheus Tyrant, isn't really into leaving things in the past. A former Umbrella executive, Morpheus was fired for being a bit too extreme for Umbrella. That's one bar that is super low. Morpheus' first boss form is pretty damn hot, but like most Resident Evil monsters, it dies and it becomes something even bigger. The Umbrella hatred and animosity continues to breathe through them, and it creates this atrocious beast. Call it a blob, a sack, whatever you want to call it. It's a mass of B.O.W. and emo hair, and it would like to add you to its, insides. This isn't a towering beast by any means, but the expanse of it is pretty frightening. Next up, Resident Evil 5, Ricardo Irving. Let's face it, Ricardo Irving is one cartoony looking and sounding villain.
Won't you two just die already? You're making me look bad.
But with enough money and connections, even the goofiest looking dude can become a colossal monster. Just add a little bit of virus to that crazy mix, and you get this. It's fascinating how the base of this monster actually hides beneath the sea, only revealing and using its arms to attack. Damage Irving's monster enough, and the beast inside will reveal itself. This is one giant fish, and undoubtedly one of the biggest. Next up, Resident Evil Village, Megamycete. If you're up for a mystery, then look no further than this fungal root. While it's not really a full-on B.O.W. or monster, the Megamycete is an enormous mold and lichen breeder, which in turn makes it into a giant question mark as well. The Megamycete's actual physical appearance resembles a large, living and pulsating fetus, which symbolizes life, as it breeds, well, killing machines. I mean, this thing just poops out most of the enemies found in Resident Evil Village. It's also a very powerful weapon, as it stores copies of organisms as it chooses. The thing is, what or who in the hell is controlling this thing? This goddamn fungal fetus actually has a cult behind it, in which it is referred to as the Black God. Makes sense when you look at the Megamycete's mind control and hallucination properties as well. Next up, Resident Evil 6, CARLA RADAMES. Resident Evil 6 is pretty much the end of the line for high-end B.O.W. companies, so you're bound to see bigger and crazier monsters on a large scale. We'll say hello to CARLA RADAMES, an Ada Wong clone. When obsession and cloning goes unchecked, you get CARLA, and CARLA's monster as well. It must be pretty crazy to see a clone of yours just melt away into nasty B.O.W. goop, as the actual Ada experienced. The boss fight itself is pretty outstanding, and there is no boss arena per se. CARLA becomes the arena. You can find her filthy hands clawing at Ada, wishing that she was the real thing. And then you see CARLA's humongous, hallway-filling face once again. RE6 falls short on certain things here and there, but I gotta admit, this is one interesting and grotesque concept. You can just hear CARLA's jealousy. And last but not least, Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles, V Complex JAVIER. The Dark Side Chronicles puts do-or-die buddies Leon Kennedy and Jack Krauser in the South American jungle in search for a notorious drug dealer, Javier Hidalgo. Except, Javier also deals in viruses. Sounds lucrative. This guy is the big bad of the region. He's very hard to find unless you have emo hair and a bunch of steroids laying around. With his back against the wall, however, Javier makes a monstrously big decision and becomes this. What you are witnessing are the after effects of the V complex. This giant plant was merged with Javier, and he became one of the biggest B.O.Ws in Resident Evil history. The monster shares a heavy resemblance with prehistoric dinosaurs. It looks like a T-Rex, but with a disgusting B.O.W spin. Tentacles, exposed organs, and of course, eyeballs amass this thing's entire body. The worst possible feature of the monster itself is that it is still able to talk. V-Complex Javier has its roots, no pun intended, within T. Veronica plants, influenced by Plant 42. Think of the setting of where Javier transformed, a jungle filled with agriculture. If this giant beast wasn't destroyed, it would have taken over the majority of human civilization in days. That's how big and powerful the V-Complex could have been. Well, thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments which biggest B.O.W you thought was the scariest, or if you have other big B.O.Ws you'd like to see on a list, let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror lore, lists, and mysteries. Have an awesome rest of your day, and as always, stay single.